Welcome back, everyone, to Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. Excited to welcome my third guest to the show today to talk about some personal finance topics. And it's my colleague, Michelle Smoley, who's also a former financial aid officer at the Mayo Clinic College of Medicine. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Beth.
All right, we're going to dig right in because we have a lot of ground to cover, and I want to make sure we can get to it all in the time
Sure.
we have. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today, or the thing we wanted to talk about today, is the concept of competing financial priorities. Can you define that for us and share why this topic is important for our audience in particular?
Sure. So competing financial priorities is really a concept that we as adults do daily, but we really don't think about it. So most of us, if not all, have, a finite amount of financial resources. So we have to prioritize on what we're going to do with those resources. Are we going to spend them, save them, invest them? And so that's really the definition of competing financial priorities. Why this is an important topic is we really oftentimes discuss these items with a lot of the families that we work with as they are looking at paying for college. Should their college student borrow? Should they work? And oftentimes, uh, managing money in college is the first time that young adults may manage their own finances. And so it can be really beneficial and important for the parents to teach these concepts early on. So they're not trying to navigate that in college along with everything else.
Right. So, I mean, you were just talking about decision making and the whole concept, right? Of that I might have a million different things I want to go out and buy, but I have a pool of money from which to purchase those things, and not all of them may be in my budget. So, obviously, that requires some decision making, and that's a key component of financial literacy. Are there some examples maybe that you could share of financial decisions that high school and college students need to make and that their parents could be talking to them about maybe now while they're still in high school?
Sure. So oftentimes, and I know I had this with my kids, let's say they want to go to a concert and it costs $200. And then in the next breath, they're like, hey, can I go to the mall? I need $200 to go to the mall.
Yeah.
So it's a very simple concept of, okay, you can have this or that, not
Right.
not both. And it really kind of helps to empower them to determine what is more valuable for them, and that can correlate, onto many aspects in their life. In fact, right before this segment, I was just reading an article that talked about how families can incorporate this concept when they go on vacation, regardless of whether it's a high school student or even if you have a 5-year-old. Set some boundaries and set some expectations and have those conversations of how much money are we going to spend on this trip, or how much money are we going to allow you to take to spend, or give you to spend.
Mhm.
So you're not spending the entire vacation saying, no, you can't have this, no, you can't have that. I think all of us as parents have those moments where we're in the grocery store, in the store, and kids are putting things in the cart all the time. And there's very easy ways of trying to incorporate uh, and set boundaries so we can teach them that we can't have it all and that we do need to prioritize.
Yeah, I think those are great examples. And I also love the idea of, a budget. Hey, we're going to be on vacation. I know you're going to want to buy things depending on the age of your child. Maybe they get $5 or maybe they get $50, right? And then you choose. And always interesting too to see how people make decisions. Do your kids go and blow all $50 in the very first place you go, and now they want other things and they can't afford it? Or do they hold on to it so long that they don't buy anything, or are they good at figuring out, okay, I like this more than anything else I've seen. I'm going to buy this and then I'll still have a little left over. And maybe that's a skill they learn by blowing it all at the beginning one time or saving it all till the end another time. Right. So
Absolutely.
love,
An- Another great example this time of year is school shopping.
yeah.
I know with my kids, I gave them an allotted amount of money that they each could spend. And if they spent it on 5 items or 25 items, that was their decision. But that was all they were getting. So
Right.
it's, do you want multiple shirts or just a couple? You know?
Right. Do you need shoes? How many
Yeah.
pairs of shoes do you want to have? And yeah, my parents practiced the exact same thing with me. And my son never wants to go back to school shopping. So I guess that's good. But I've
Mhm.
always sort of had it in my head that, oh, I could do that. But then I'm always like, do you need anything? Nah, I'm fine. That was certainly not me when I was a teenager. I will say that. So,
Me
um,
either.
I think we've been talking about this in terms of some steps that can help young adults make sound financial decisions. Anything that we haven't covered from that perspective of advice and steps that you can take?
I think one important step might be to teach them to wait. So don't
Mm,
make that impulse purchase, which I am just as guilty of doing as anybody else. I mean, it's so easy today in a cashless society, and the fact that we're not really handling physically handling
yeah.
money. We have all these apps that, you can spend a lot of money in a very short amount of time.
On your phone
So
in 5 minutes. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. So, you know, delay that gratification, which is a little bit different concept than what many of us are used to today in today's society of
Right.
instant gratification. Um, Start to maybe have them set some financial goals. Uh, and start that early on from a saving perspective. Maybe now that if they're working this summer, that they save 500 or $1,000 by the end of the summer or by the end of the year. Um, are they working towards a larger purchase? So maybe they're looking at purchasing an automobile and or helping to pay for some of their college expenses uh, in the next few years. So setting some goals and help them to understand and in how to uh,
Hmm.
uh, achieve those goals and give them some insight in how to do that. And um, it can come down to doing a cost benefit analysis of, do I value this item or this activity, and is it really going to be worth my while, or am I going to have buyer's remorse next week, uh,
Right.
or not like it once it arrives? So
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I would say, one thing that, again, we rely on our own experiences, right? With my son is that one of the expectations we set is that he would earn all his spending money. And that if he wanted to do something like join a fraternity, those dues and things like that would be coming out of the money that he earned. And he really went back and forth in freshman year about, did he want to join a fraternity? Did he not? He initially thought he didn't, then he sort of kind of got a little excited about the idea. And then when he sat down and did the math and said, there are other things that I want to be able to spend my money on, like I'd like to get a car. And if I have a car, I can't afford the dues, or I'm going to have to get a second job. He went through it all and decided, I don't think the fraternity thing is for me. And it was great to see that in action. And I think it was helpful because he knew going in that we weren't going to cover that for him. So he always knew, rather than that being a shock, right? Like, what do you mean you're not going to
exactly,
pay for that? So communicating is such an important component, right, of teaching our kids financial responsibility.
absolutely, absolutely.
Um,
And kudos to you for doing that.
Yeah, I listen, believe it or not. I've been on these calls. I hear what you guys are saying. I have been fortunate enough to see in action decisions that other parents make, honestly, both good and bad.
Mhm.
When it comes to college and the things that they pay for, my husband sets a really great example of how he did this with his own son. And so while I can't say that I'm always paying attention to what people are saying to me or taking good advice, on this front, I did manage to do that. So yeah, so I should really be thanking you and the finance team, because without the stories that you guys share, I'm not sure I would have been as thoughtful about it for sure. So
Thank you.
Michelle, what haven't we talked about today when it comes to competing financial priorities and sort of the importance of teaching that this or that rather than both? Why not both? This or that is a really important piece in making sure our kids are financially literate.
Yes. So a couple other points is maybe some tips for parents is when you say no, or maybe when you have you offer your young adults or children a choice, or when you say no, explain why
Yeah.
and explain, how you came to that conclusion. Again, another very simple example is how many times do they want to eat out, and we go through that, no, we're eating dinner at home. And so instead of saying maybe no because I said so, which I
Right.
was guilty of, it is
We all are.
explaining that we're going out this Saturday night, so this week we're going to eat at home because it costs this amount of dollars. One thing that talked to my husband about for our 18-year-old last week was calculating how many hours that he would have to work to pay for things like pay for gas in his car, or pay for that new skateboard, or mini bike that he wants, or those types of things, and run those calculations, and it really kind of starts to set in regarding, oh, I really have to put some effort into
Right.
getting this item, and do I really want to put forth that much effort for that item, or do I want to put my energy and financial resources somewhere else? So
Yeah.
um, really it helps them build a solid decision making foundation, so when they go off and they're managing money on their own, that they're not going to set themselves up for failure as far as going into debt and maybe not having savings, or understanding the benefits and the importance of an emergency savings. And uh, it helps them to define their wants versus their needs. And so those are some principal concepts that go along with competing financial priorities.
Right, right. I mean, another thing too that I think you can do with some kids, maybe not all, but maybe they do the grocery shopping and you have a list of things that you want them to buy and a set of budget for how much they can spend. And there's probably a little play there between there'll be some leftover money and you say, hey, you can go do the grocery shopping and you can buy a couple of things that aren't on this list, but you must buy what's on this list. You only have this much money, and then whatever else you want to get, great, you could toss in there. But if it goes over the budget, either you pay for the excess or, you don't get it. And that'll teach, even something seemingly like small dollars, which if you're feeding an 18-year-old boy, I know it's not small dollars.
Right.
Like going to the grocery store, it's a really great way to see like, oh, well, if I got this store brand instead of the name brand, the store brand is cheaper. And, I know I like that one just as much. So I'll just get that version. Or I guess I really don't need this big giant box of candy because I'd rather have a couple of those protein bars that I'm going to have when I'm at the gym or something like that. Right. That's another way I think that you could shows, and maybe also they could see why you might not want to go out to dinner every night because you've just spent all this money on food that's going to go to waste if you don't go home and cook it and eat that. So, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. Waste is something that I struggle with my son, and ordering too much, not eating it, and trying to have that conversation of, do you really realize, the amount of money that was just kind of thrown out the window because you didn't make a good choice.
Right.
So, uh, and I love the grocery store idea. Uh, Even going to a department store, Target, and I can never come out of there with a small bill, but having them kind of understand, uh, when you're buying just necessities, how high
Right.
that
That cost can be.
absolutely, without all the little extras.
Yes. Michelle, thanks so much for being on the show today. And thanks to all my guests. Next week, Shannon is going to be hosting. We are going to be talking about the Research University next week. So if you came here today looking for that, well, come back next week. We're also going to do another Q&A. Don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And we are here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern and 1 p.m. Pacific.